hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Welcome to the party. Can you hear me? Give me like a thumbs up or loud and clear or something so I know if the sound's working. Yay, awesome. Okay, well I guess that every good party has a couple little mishaps. Welcome to Mrs. Selfe's birthday, and I'm so glad y'all could come. I'm so proud to read this book to you, to talk to you, to tell you a little bit about how this book got started, where it came from. I also want to say thank you to some very important people. My name is Shoshana Shope. I am a mother to an amazing 11-year-old. I'm married to a wonderful man. We've been married 17 years. I could not have done this book without their support. Aaron actually helped me color this and helped me get it finished and ready. And my husband, he supported me, believed in me, encouraged me, and never faltered in cheering me on and helping me get this completed. I also want to give a shout out to DJ Silver. He lent us these amazing lights, so I have a nice little ambiance, and everybody knows a party needs good ambiance. So I wanted to say a big thank you to him. I also wanted to say thank you to Danny Dorman and his wife, who were a big help in getting this all put together. They're amazing old supporters as well. Beyond being a mother and a wife, both roles are amazing blessings for me. I also happen to be able to be honored and blessed to be a school resource officer. I work for the Williamson County Sheriff's Office, and while with them, I've been able to be assigned with the role and job of protecting the school, the children, the staff, but also with the wonderful blessing of getting to know the students, being their friends, being in their corners, and I've learned probably more from them than I could ever hope to teach them. And they are a big part of this book. And the school that I happen to be assigned to is Perry Creek Elementary. Go Panthers! It's an amazing school, great special ed team, great teachers, great staff, super supportive family, students. It's like one big community. While being there, I happen to be inspired by some super amazing kids. Many of the kids that helped inspire this book. This book itself is about overcoming obstacles, which can come in many different forms. That we have to find our own special way to succeed. And everyone's success looks different for each person. The main character of this book, Mrs. Selfe, is based off of a really cool art teacher I happened to get to know the first year I was assigned as an SRO. Mrs. Selfe was a super encouraging, ever peppy, always high energy, and always believed, a heart full of joy. And she always told students that would feel discouraged that there is no wrong way to do art. So because of that, she was a perfect choice for the main character of this book. The red cat-eye glasses happened to be a shout out to her because she always wore the red glasses. She also always found ways that no matter who the kid was, no matter their talent level, that they found their own way to enjoy art, to find their own excitement and belief in themselves. So she is the main character of this book. The students at the school, I want to use this book to bless them. So 25% of all profits are going back to the special needs kids or special needs department at Perry Creek Elementary. The book itself is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and I also plan on having some in stock. If you're local or even distance, I can ship it. Thank you so much for y'all's support. I'm so glad you could come here for the party. I love each and every one of you, and I just want to spread such a heart of joy, encouragement. Everyone has gone through a time where they weren't sure, they were trying something new, and they weren't sure if they were going to be able to do it. So about a year ago, that was my own journey. A year ago, I made up a prototype of this book. I drew it out, I typed it up, put it together in a book, and I emailed the amazing teachers at Perry Creek to see if they wouldn't mind that I read to their classes, so I could kind of see how students thought, if they liked it. And through amazing support with them, they all jumped right on board. I love the teachers at that school. They're all super engaged. They believe in every kid. And they wanted to give back to me and help me spread the word of encouragement to their own students. So, without further ado, and for all the little kiddies that are in their PJs that maybe just want a special bedtime story, I will certainly read this book, Mrs. Selfe's Zoo School of Art. So let's all settle in. Let's get our PJs or comfy blanket, and let's hear about some neat kids that face some unique struggles so that they could overcome and find their own way to succeed. This book itself, I made out to my son, my husband, and the amazing kids that inspire me daily, which is all those kiddos that are my little special warriors at Perry Creek, who without hesitation face so many obstacles and still find joy and excitement and just love people just as simply love. And that true joy and love and acceptance is something that I think everybody could use. So, without further ado, Mrs. Selfe stood at the door to art class. She was wearing an apron with colorful splatters all over the front and back. Mrs. Selfe had a warm smile on her face as her first set of students arrived. "Welcome," said Mrs. Selfe. "I'm so glad you're here. Today is going to be a fun day. We are going to paint," Mrs. Selfe explained. The students began to grumble. No one seemed to be excited about painting. Ellie Elephant started to sniffle. "Mrs. Selfe, I can't paint." Mrs. Selfe smiled at Ellie and replied, "Ellie, why can't you paint?" Ellie looked down at her feet and frowned. "Mrs. Selfe, I have big feet with no toes. I can't hold a paintbrush." Ellie slumped down. She was convinced she was not going to be any good at art. Mrs. Selfe smiled at Ellie and tickled Ellie's trunk with her tail. "Ellie," she said, "you have a very special tool that no one else has." Ellie slowly looked up at Mrs. Selfe. "I don't have anything special." Mrs. Selfe very gently patted Ellie's cheek and said, "Ellie, you have a strong trunk that is just perfect for holding a paintbrush." Ellie's face brightened and a smile reached her eyes. "You are right, Mrs. Selfe. I can do it." Mrs. Selfe got Ellie all set up at her own table. Ellie began her masterpiece. As Mrs. Selfe turned around, Tristan Tiger began to growl. "Mrs. Selfe, I can't paint." With gentle concern, Mrs. Selfe replied, "Why can't you paint, Tristan?" "Because, Mrs. Selfe, I have sharp claws. I can't hold a brush. I have ferocious teeth, so I can't use my mouth to hold a brush either," Tristan grumbled. Mrs. Selfe smiled sweetly and scratched Tristan's tail. "Tristan," Mrs. Selfe replied, "you have a long, strong tail that is perfect for holding a brush." Tristan puffed his chest out and began to purr. "Mrs. Selfe, you are right. My strong tail Mrs. Selfe turned around and saw Patricia Peacock. Mrs. Selfe noticed that Patricia's tail was drooped low and her head was hanging down. Mrs. Selfe patted her wing and asked, "What's wrong, Patricia?" Patricia ruffled her wings and squawked, "Mrs. Selfe, I have feathers. I can't hold a brush. I can't hold a brush with my beak either. I can't paint." Mrs. Selfe gently patted Patricia's wing. "Patricia," Mrs. Selfe replied, "you can be a great painter. You have long, graceful legs and feet that are perfect for holding a brush." Patricia's tail feathers raised and her feather crown lifted. Patricia flapped her wings happily. "Mrs. Selfe," Patricia chirped, "you are right. I can do this." Mrs. Selfe beamed proudly at Patricia and got her set up at her own table. Mrs. Selfe turned around and saw a very sad Holly Hippo. Holly had her ears down and her head low. "Mrs. Selfe," Holly hiccuped, "I can't paint. I can't use my tail, it's too short. I can't use my feet. I can't use my snout. There is no way I can paint." Holly slumped down and began to cry. Mrs. Selfe gently scratched behind Holly's ear. "Holly," Mrs. Selfe replied, "you are perfect just the way you are. You can paint. You have a very strong mouth that can hold a brush true and steady." Holly's tail flicked and her ears began to perk up. "Mrs. Selfe," Holly said, "you are right. I can. My mouth is very strong. I can paint." Mrs. Selfe helped Holly settle into her spot. Mrs. Selfe smiled proudly as she stood back and watched her class paint. Ellie painted a beautiful field of trees and grass. Tristan painted a lush green jungle with vines and animals. Patricia painted a field full of colorful flowers and a river. Holly painted a big, cool, sparkling lake with many kinds of fish. Each student hummed a song while they painted with joy and excitement. Mrs. Selfe let the class know it was time to clean up. After the students cleaned up, they brought up their masterpieces. Mrs. Selfe praised them warmly. "I am so proud of each of you. All of you found your own special way to succeed." Ellie, Tristan, Patricia, and Holly all grinned. They all hugged Mrs. Selfe. Mrs. Selfe lined them up at the door. As the class left the art room, Mrs. Selfe called after them, "You can do anything in your own special way." Well, ladies and gentlemen and little kitties, that is the book. And I hope that you learned an important lesson. That even when we're faced with something that we just don't think we can do, that we just have to find our own way with our own talents, our own skills and creative abilities. That when we try hard to find our own path, we will succeed as long as we never give up. Thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed our little party, and I apologize for any bloopers we might have had at the beginning. You understand these things just happen. I'm so thankful for all of your support and your belief, and I pray and that all of you are truly blessed by this. So the next time that maybe you just feel like you just can't, remember that you can find your own special way to succeed. Just like I try each and every day to help every one of the kids that I help serve and protect at Perry Creek Elementary as their school resource officer, because I want them each to have that moment to shine bright. So I hope that each and every one of you find your own special way to shine bright. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you have a wonderful night. Sweet dreams.